Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan Mater.
All right. We're having a little technical difficulties, I think, to start off the show. But we're back here in Operation Domination. Thanks for joining us. If you won your championships, congrats. And if you're coming back for more, we absolutely love it, because we did tell you that we were going to go all throughout the NFL playoffs into the Super Bowl, because we got bets to talk about, Dynasty to talk about. Of course, we'll have some DFS if we can get Chase on, who's having a little bit of an issue tonight. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But basically, this is how it's going to work. We're going to have Chas Filardi of Sports Betting Weekly on in the second half of the show. We're going to talk about all the bets of the weekend. I got some player props to go along with it. And of course, it's getting ready for Dynasty time. The season doesn't sleep, guys. We just switch gears and keep it on going. So week 18 coming up. First of all, for those of you who are in week 18 championships, please, love of God, leave the league now. Okay, leave it. You're a bunch of amateurs. I don't understand it. I don't know why you continue to do it. When the NFL switched the season to being 17 games, you had an easy out, and yet still, boom, you guys are still playing with extra weeks for no reason in the playoffs. So stop doing it to yourselves. This is a week of DFS and bets and cashing tickets, and we'll get all into that. All right, so we'll be throughout the NFL playoffs. We'll be back on Wednesday nights at 9:30 just to get the scheduling there out of the way. I'm your host, Dan Mater, joined here with Adam LaRue, Chris Dowhauer. Hopefully, we'll be able to get Chase Thornton back on in a little while. I want to give a quick shout out from the Fantasy Football Advice Network. We had multiple jersey leagues, and the league I was a part of was the Brand Ayuk signed league, and Colby Conway, a good friend from the Expo, won that league this past week. So that part, very, very cool. Now, to get into this, since we don't have Chase, Chris, Adam, we're going to go to your guys' segment right off the rip with the Dynasty temperature check. If I can ever find the drop. Who moved my drops around? Like, seriously, what is going on here?
Hot air. So hot in here.
New year, people think they can get frisky. Go ahead, Chris.
All right, Adam. So we want people to dominate, just not, we talked about Dynasty. So we want the rain to begin this off-season. So we're going to begin our off-season shopping list. This is where we're going to try to address some of our needs for our team. And we're going to look at some of the different positions that, that we need to kind of fill. And then we're going to look at some of the different tier players that maybe fill those positions, Adam. So one of the things that we want to kind of dive into tonight is the running back position, the position that has scored a lot of points in fantasy this year, but a position that's also often overlooked in Dynasty. I feel like it's a position that gets undervalued sometimes, but this draft is going to be a deep draft. I'll follow up that next show. So I'll give you guys a little taste of that. We get to talk about the draft coming up, but we have a lot of guys who kind of came out of nowhere. We have a lot of players who were drafted high or we thought were going to be good players to produce, but didn't necessarily do so. But we had a lot of guys who won championships for some of those guys who had Saquon Barkley, who had the Derrick Henrys of the world, who maybe even had some of the other guys, that shined this year, like Kyron Williams. So, Adam, we're going to try to help some of these Dynasty owners fill the positions in their shopping list needs. Even though Christmas is over, we still have lots of stuff that we need to fill. And I'm going to ask you for your feedback on some of these guys, just to kind of get us started, to kind of talk about some of the tiers we're going to talk about and how we're going to kind of separate some of these positions. So one of the positions we have are tier 4 guys, or our sleepers. They're kind of like the flyers, the guys we want to take a shot on. Guys maybe shined, or maybe guys people might be forgetting about. So a player that kind of jumps out to my mind, Adam, is like a Jordan Mason or a Sincere McCormick. Two guys that kind of, one shined at the beginning of the season, kind of disappeared as we saw Isaac Grando become healthy and got more entrenched. Jordan Mason got hurt. We saw Christian McCaffrey get hurt. Jordan Mason is going to be a guy who's a restricted free agent this offseason. But we have a guy like him. We have a guy like Sincere McCormick who came on strong for 3 weeks there for Raiders. But we have a lot of changeover that happened to Raiders. They have two guys who are going to be free agents. We haven't really seen Hunter Lupe become, a guy that they use too much. So, Adam, where do those kind of players kind of fall in your tiers when it comes to these players that we're looking at, like I said, Sear McCormick or a guy like a Jordan Mason? When it comes to these come as flyers, or these sleepers, or these guys you're just discarding?
I think McCormick is likely going to be a discard. He's someone who, I mean, we'll see. He was free on waivers not that long ago, so there's certainly a thought of, keeping an eye out, seeing what the offseason holds. I'm not necessarily dropping today, but I don't have particularly high hopes. He's someone who, I mean, look, it's his third year in the league. It's his first time really even being on the roster. He got 40 carries. He looked good for a bad team, and that does take a lot at the running back position, but then he immediately gets hurt. It's just a bad situation. Jordan Mason, on the other hand, a little more interesting. He played really well this season when he was on the field. He's someone that we've known for a couple of years now is valuable on special teams. He's someone who, I mean, I can feel very confident about being on a roster next season, and then someone who, once he gets on a roster is explosive, seems to be the type of guy that coaches like to have. So he's someone that I think you're betting on him being at least a handcuff, if not. I mean, look, with this rookie class, it's going to be hard to sneak a guy into a starting spot like you have in years past. But, never say never. There's certainly the possibility the team does something like Dallas did this past year and kind of just doesn't, attack the position that much. I doubt it, but it's certainly possible. So he's someone that I'm keen to keep my eye on throughout the offseason.
Well, you break with name another guy I wanted to bring up to attention, and the guy I think is going to be, people basically was one of these sleepers or these guys that people had just kind of chucked from the rosters last year, I should say. Rico Dowdle, the guy that could be on a lot of people's championship rosters, had a nice little streak there for Dallas towards the end of the season, went over 100 yards in 2 weeks. A guy that suddenly has opportunity to show he's now could be different coaching staff. But what are you doing with Rico Dowdle? Is this somebody that you look at as a guy that you could have as a running back option next year, or is this another guy that you look at as hey, this guy's a lower tier guy?
He's someone who I would be keen to sell if I can. I mean, he's coming off a 1,000-yard season. It's a situation that reminds me of Atlanta a couple years ago. Now, I don't think Dallas is necessarily going to get a Bijan Robinson type of player, but just in the sense of you have a 1,000-yard incumbent back. But it just feels, unlikely that said 1,000-yard incumbent back is going to be the guy kind of moving forward. And I think this offseason is going to be a sell opportunity for Rico Dowdle, who, I mean, he's someone who I had on a bunch of rosters and grabbed on waivers leaving last season, who was a great end of the season grab. Was awesome this year, but I think, again, hit the 1,000-yard marker, but only one touchdown this season. Hasn't been as great for fantasy as you would maybe hope, at least rushing. Not someone who I'm super keen to keep.
All right, so then moving on to some other guys, Adam, some guys people we drafted this year in this draft class. Jalen Wright, Lloyd, Blake Corum, those kinds of players necessarily all got different opportunities to shine. Lloyd didn't even get on the field this entire season. Green Bay seems to kind of, been reliant more on Josh Jacobs more than we thought he would be, but we also saw Chris Brooks get rotated in there, some different players. And then you talk about Jalen Wright, a guy that people had a lot of hope for, thought was going to be probably the A-chain possibly of this year, and maybe didn't kind of necessarily materialize that way. And then Blake Corum, the guy that we're all assuming at least would be kind of a handcuff to Kyren Williams, but it didn't necessarily materialize either. So some of those guys this draft, where are you kind of placing those players, and where are you looking at some of these guys, moving forward?
All three of these guys are guys I have tempered optimism for. I think Lloyd was a season lost to injury functionally. I think he's someone that I'm not necessarily panicking on, at least not to the point of dropping him. I think he's, rosterable. I think there's, reason to have some, tempered optimism with him. And again, I think same with these other guys. Corum is still someone who, look, Kyron's a small back who has a lot of mileage and isn't necessarily a crazy athlete. I don't think it would be absurd to project or to expect a fall off from him at some point, or weeks missed from injury. And I think Corum, with another season of development, another season in this system, can be a guy that you can depend on if he does see the field in that situation. So at the very minimum, I do think moving forward, that idea we've had of him being a handcuff, I think that does come to fruition in the future. And then as far as Jalen Wright goes, I think it feels pretty likely that Mostert's off the roster, which kind of cleans things up, at least for him as well, to get at least a handcuff role, if not, maybe reverting to a situation closer to last season. I don't think that the split would quite be the same. I think Achane has cemented himself as the 1A in any rotation that forms there, but I think that there's a possibility they use him as a hammer towards the red zone in the future, at least a possibility. But I do think he'll get involved as the running back group kind of sorts itself out, gets a little less crowded in Miami.
Yeah, Scott White, thanks for joining the show. Are we giving out Week 18 advice? If you have a question, drop it in the comments in our YouTube section, and we will get to you as we go along. Good.
All right. So then, Adam, to help people do some tier shopping that maybe some of the guys maybe you like or some of the guys we even talked about, do you have some guys that you're tier 4 sleepers or flyer targets that you're looking to, maybe you're studying some tape on, or guys that you're trying to acquire now? Dynasty is the best. We talked about being year long, but this is the time to kind of do your homework in a sense, in my opinion. Know those players that have a chance. Look at different guys that are different ends of their contracts or different positions that might be changing out that we talked about. So is there any guys that you're looking to try to get as some sleepers or some guys you're taking a flyers on that maybe have your tier 4 options people should be looking to add to their shopping list this offseason?
Yeah, I think the big ones for me, it just kind of stay in the AFC West. We talked about Sincere McCormick. I think kind of exploring that backfield. I didn't like Laube coming out, but I think if you liked him, that there's got to be interest there, just given, there's not a clear answer at that backfield yet, and they have a lot of problems. It's certainly not I would expect them to draft a running back, but I don't know that it's necessarily a given, just knowing that there's so many holes on that roster. I think the Chargers are in a similar situation where you could talk yourself into, searching for Kamani Vidal or something similar at the bottom of that Chargers depth chart over the offseason. Just knowing that Dobbins was on, I believe, a 1-year contract, as was Edwards, to my knowledge. Edwards up there in age, didn't necessarily look great this season. Dobbins looked great, but obviously did eventually end up getting hurt. One of his healthiest season as a pro since he was a rookie, but nonetheless did end up eventually getting hurt. I would be shocked if Dobbins didn't return, but you're always with him going to have that probably want to roster his backup type of situation. So if Vidal, supplants or Haskins even supplants Edwards, he becomes, pretty valuable there for a team that, does have an emphasis. Whether it's a run-first team, I think that's up for arguments at this point. They've certainly developed their passing game, but there's definitely an emphasis on them having a run game.
Yeah, and J.K. Dobbins, as you're correct, did have a 1-year deal. Gus Edwards got a 2-year deal, but it's something they can easily get out of. So we'll leave off this week with our tier 3. We're going to get into tier 1s and 2s next week and some of our draft prospects that we like. But here's some of the flex options maybe you're looking at, Adam. Some of these guys that maybe you can acquire that you think, hey, next year this could be a guy I can put as a flex option in my lineup week in, week out. We know a lot of Dynasty teams have 6 or 7, different flex option positions they might have to fill. So that running back, I think, has shown to have great value. Is there any guys you're looking at, and maybe the names you mentioned, but some guys maybe you're looking at think, hey, this is a guy I definitely can stick in a flex and feel pretty good about possibly next year?
Flex is tough. I guess what I'll throw out there is that just due to the injuries and due to coming slow off of his return, Pacheco is someone who has not, at least to this point, recouped much of his value. Has definitely, lost a lot in terms of dynasty value over the last few months. So someone who, over the offseason, depending on how the Chiefs' playoff run goes, could certainly, be available for a good price to probably more of an RB2 situation, but nonetheless.
So some of the guys that I think about jump to my head when I think about some of the flex options people might look at, it was some of those guys you did talk about for this year, Adam, that didn't necessarily pop off, like the Jalen Wrights, like the Lloyds. We know that, historically some of these running backs have injury issues. These aren't the most durable backfields, and they have a history of usually splitting back in touches. So I do think that looking around some of those guys, it might not necessarily be strong flex options for sure week in, week out, but we know that having some depth at running back is extremely important, especially as injuries start creeping up. But we also saw, like I talked about some of those guys, like a Sincere McCormick, where a couple weeks here or there could be big for your roster that you kind of can plug in. Another guy I'll throw out there just real quick is Eric Gray. I think he might be falling more than tier 4 guys. As a guy that I think is going to take a flyer on, maybe like with a Sincere McCormick possibly, as guys that you look at position, like Tyrone Tracy, yes, it looks like he's the back of the back, back for the future. Devin Singletary is going to probably have a different regime there. If it's a different coaching staff, could be there, different GM there. He's an older running back. It's easy to see him get kind of cut and moved on, different regime coming. Eric Gray was the guy that kind of took the first snaps of the season. People kind of forget about that. So I think there's different backs to kind of look at. And I think that's what we're going to kind of get into, some of those higher flex options we talked about moving forward. Next week in our tier 2s and our tier 1s, we look for some of those steals to get some of the RB1 options and then get into this draft class. So back to you, Dan.
Yeah, I want to address Scott's question here. Will it be Richardson or Joe Flacco getting the start for Indy this week? Look, right now, Anthony Richardson did not practice today. Now, Shane Steichen's still holding out hope that he'll be able to go. But honestly, at this point, I would say it's more likely going to be Joe Flacco than it would be Anthony Richardson. But of course, we're going to have to wait to see how that plays out for the rest of the year. Or rest of the week, excuse me. Hopefully that'll answer your question with any dilemmas you have going on. With that, though, we have time for a quick DFS cocktail segment with Chase back in the building.
Hey, it's week 18. Carson Wentz is starting for the Chiefs, and Saquon's not going to get to shatter the all-time record against the team that showed him the door, but Josh Allen's going to play, but will he really? And there's human sacrifice and dogs and cats living together. It's mass hysteria, but DraftKings and the other DFS sites are still offering us late. So we're going to go mining for fantasy gold here this week. With all the confusion, I want to give everybody an idea real quick on strategy with this kind of a slate for week 18. We all know the way it works. Most of us don't play fantasy championships week 18 because there's no telling who plays or how much. Josh Allen's going to start. It's normally a matchup we might exploit, but we're not going to pay $8,500 to get maybe $1,200 worth of value from Josh Allen. For me, week 18 is actually less about the matchups, and it's more about each team's and each player's situation individually. I want to get my main DFS plays from games that still mean something to the teams that are in them. I want to target good offenses with something to play for where they're not going to be pulling their top 3 wideouts by halfway through the second quarter. So that's where I want my main money. After that, then we'll target individuals who have themselves something to play for, and then guys who might be getting an opportunity to play a lot more than they normally do in maybe one of those good traditional matchups. So who fits that bill? Hey, how about Baker freaking Mayfield at 7,000? Plant the flag, baby. Tampa Bay controls their own destiny. They're winning in. They're playing a soulless, lifeless New Orleans team. Liam Cohen has unlocked the former first-round pick there, and if you don't think Baker's going to be flinging that thing all over the field, you obviously haven't watched a single second of Red Zone or Sports Center or anything this season, because Mayfield had 4 touchdown passes last time out against the Saints. He scored over 30 DraftKings points. I love it. Dan loves it. The American people love it. Shake and bake, baby. We're going to go with Mayfield there in the quarterback slot. We're going to pair him with Jalen McMillan at 5,100. Okay, now everyone wanted off the J-Mac train last week, and it was, oh, the touchdown streak can't continue, yada, yada. Well, not only did it continue, he scored a pair. Okay, the man's on a roll. There's still questions about the tight end position on his team with Otton's injury status. Mike Evans can't catch everything, but McMillan can catch just about everything that they throw at him. He's got a reception percentage on 76% of his targets over the 4-game heater he's been on. Saints allow the 8th most points to wide receiver. All aboard that train, okay? With that, do we have any more viewer questions we got to get to here, or are we going to get
we can just come right back around. So Scott's saying he's got Geno or Rodgers as his other options to Anthony Richardson or I guess Joe Flacco. I'm going to say this, and I'll see if you guys agree with this or not. Geno could be a bit of a wild card this week. Seattle's got nothing to play for, but they're playing all their starters. The Rams are benching pretty much everybody from what we understand. Like, they can't really move up or down in the seed. They locked in the division. So I think Geno in his last game here in week 18 could be a little bit of a wild card as the Seattle Seahawks try to go out on a high note. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, like I just said, he's an individual who might have something to play for here, because this was a little bit of a shaky year for them and for him in general there. He might be out to show that he still deserves to be the guy on this team going forward. Of your options there, if Richardson doesn't play, Geno would be all right for me.
What are you going to say, Chris?
I like your thinking, but that thinking takes me to Flacco. I think he's the guy who had YOLO. I mean, basically his career could be on the line. What's he had to lose? And we've seen every time Joe Flacco's out there, the culture winging it around as much as possible. They have the weapons too. But I think Geno's not a bad play there, Dan. I think you make a good point. Nothing to play for. Got good weapons on that team. playing against Rams defense that's not good with all their starters. Imagine not having starters. So
the problem is I just watched Flacco YOLO himself to like a bottom 20 quarterback against the Giants. So that's my little hesitation there. Although you're not wrong. Like we know it's highly volatile with either option that you go with for this particular week. But Chase, so what are you working up there and what do you got left here?
All right, we're starting a Brandy Alexander here, okay? It's the close friend of last week's Amontillado Sheriff. We heard that joke before. It's a Brandy Alexander. It's nice. It's festive. It's kind of an adult milkshake, if you will. A little bit of a classic cocktail here, but easy to make. Not a whole lot in it. Normally, you do a 1.5 ounce of brandy there. You might have noticed I poured for about 3 minutes there. I'm making a double here, so I actually put 3 ounces of brandy in mine. But 1.5 ounces of brandy, and then an ounce, I used 2 because it's a double, of creme de cacao there. And then we're going to go with 2 ounces of heavy cream. I love using actual heavy cream. Some people will use milk in their cocktails. No, use the actual heavy cream. That's the way to go there. So it's basically a little bit more than a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio with just those 3 ingredients: heavy cream, brandy, and creme de cacao. All right. So then as I start that, I'm pouring that into an ice-filled shaker. We're going to debate a bit of tight end here. I'm not as confident surveying the tight end landscape this week as I normally feel like I am. So we're going to make the case real quick between one Brock Bowers and the best Dolphins fantasy option who's not named Devon Achane, Mr. Jonnu Andre Smith. Okay. So again, we added those ingredients there. And now, in terms of the case for Bowers, we all know he's had a great year. He's the tight end 1 overall. He's the tight end 3 in DraftKings points per game. He's the week 18 consensus tight end 1, and he's also the most expensive tight end on the slate over there at DraftKings. Chargers give up the 6th fewest points to tight ends. It's not a great matchup for him, but his first game against them was the very first game of the season, and he still caught 6 out of 8 passes. So, I mean, he can play against this team. He hasn't scored a touchdown since November, but he's coming off back-to-back top 10 tight end finishes anyway, because they are going to target him and he's going to catch it and he's going to get his yards. He's got the most receptions by any rookie in NFL history, the most receiving yards by a rookie tight end. That's our case for Bowers right here. Then our case for Jonnu Smith. He's the tight end 4 overall this season. He's a tight end 5 on DraftKings points per game. He's the consensus tight end 5 this week. He's going up against the Jets team that gives up the 7th fewest points to tight ends. He scored 6 touchdowns in his last 7 games, including his last time out against the Jets. And he scored last week in week 17 with Mr. Snoop, all-world Huntley playing quarterback there for Tua in Miami. Now, Miami needs to win, and they need help to make the playoffs. So we know they're going to be trying. And like I said, he's been their most consistent option who's not named Devon Achane all season. So that's the case for Smith there. I am going to give this thing a shake, but while I do that, let's go around the horn and you guys give your cases as to who you think should be our tight end this week, Brock Bowers or Jonnu Smith. Dan, let's start with you.
Yeah, so this is actually a case where I'm going to go with Brock Bowers. We think it's going to be Tyler Huntley, I think, starting a quarterback. I mean, the Dolphins are beyond hopeful it's going to be Tua, but he still hasn't been able to practice, and they're already preparing like it's going to be Tyler Huntley. I know Aiden McConnell wants to go to one guy, or really 2 guys, but one guy above all, and that is Brock Bowers over and over and over again, who's had the greatest season ever now for a rookie tight end, surpassing Mike Ditka finally in every single category. So I'm going to pay up. I am not falling victim to this. We pay down for tight ends and try, because it doesn't work this year. It doesn't work this year. You either have an elite tight end or you have nothing. So I'm paying up for Brock Bowers at $6,600.
All right. Hey, Chris, how about you? Bowers or Jonnu Smith?
Yeah, I don't have a super strong argument for either one. I think Bowers is kind of the easy play, the guy you can trust the most, but probably the most expensive. Jonnu's been a kind of cheat code in a sense where he's a little cheaper, has been just as involved. Don't love Tyler Huntley as your quarterback necessarily to feature as your tight, going to your tight end. So I don't love that part. The guy I throw out there just the third option, possibly if you don't want to spend tight end, is Jawan Johnson. I think he's a nice cheap option, $3,600 taking on Tampa Bay. They're going to throw the ball versus that team, so that's just an extra option to throw out there. And real quick, Chase, can Adam answer this question for us real quick? We saw on stream.
Yeah, I was actually going to get that, Adam, when there was a break here. Adam, you're the perfect guy to answer this question.
Oh, so the difference there will be so Dynasty typically you're keeping all of your players, you're keeping the full roster, you're trading draft picks, you're doing the whole thing. Keeper is, you're keeping a handful of guys or a guy, and you're typically keeping them functionally as a draft pick in almost like a redraft, right? Like it's a normal redraft, except say a guy that's projected to go in the third round. I'm keeping him as a 5th round pick from my previous year's team, or multiple guys, or however you set it up. But generally, again, Dynasty, same rosters. You're drafting rookies every year, but you're keeping the same core roster every year. Keeper is kind of a mishmash between redraft and Dynasty, where you're mostly redrafting, but you're keeping a couple players.
And I'll be honest, kind of like week 18. Just do one or the other. Don't bother with keeper. I mean, really, because the keeper just kind of turns into a redraft league when it's all said and done anyway. So just do one or the other. That's why we cover one or the other here on the Operation Domination show. All right, Chase, do you have anything else for? Oh no, we still got to go around, right? Adam has to give his pick. Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny that Chris brought up Juwan Johnson. Honest to gosh, I had Juwan Johnson in the slot to begin with before I thought, you know what? Let's debate. We can afford to spend up a little bit. I do like Juwan Johnson as a cheap option if you want to pay at other positions this week for other guys. Juwan Johnson is somebody who I would have my eye on as well as a cheap play there at the tight end position. Adam, do you have a preference though between Brock Bowers and Jonnu Smith?
Yeah, I don't have a strong one. I'm gonna lean towards Brock Bowers, just knowing the Chargers don't really have a lot to play for, so that there's a decent chance you're not really getting their best. So that should be big on the matchup train there. Not to say that isn't the case for the Dolphins and the Jets, with the Dolphins playing for something and the Jets not so much. But I'm gonna lean Bowers there. I'm not strongly opposed to Jonnu if anyone wants to switch them out in your own lineups.
There we have it then. Hey, we're going to go with Brock Bowers. I'll go with that as well. If you want to save some money out there, because he is, like I said, the most expensive tight end on the slate, we did give you a couple other options, Jonnu Smith or Juwan Johnson. I garnished this thing with nutmeg. So there we go. We've got our adult milkshake, essentially a Brandy Alexander into a coupe glass there. But at running back this week, we're going to pay up before we get out of here. And we're going to get another big gun at 8,500. We're going to go with Bijan Robinson. He's the most expensive player on the slate who's actually going to play. The Falcons need a win. He's their best shot at that against the Carolina team that gives up the most points to opposing fantasy running backs. He had 95 yards and 2 scores last time out against the Panthers. He's got 2 straight weeks with multiple touchdowns and a rookie quarterback to protect. I say, give me all the Bijan. Okay. So then with that, does anybody have any other cheap options that they would like to throw out there to maybe help fill out lineups? It is a weird week. We've got deep dives that we kind of have to go to. If we're going to pay up for these guys, for some of these big guns, we might have to pay down for some of the guys who honestly are going to play quite a bit. I will go first here real quick. I'm going to throw out Michael Carter at 4,700 in the backfield for the Arizona Cardinals. He's averaging 4.9 yards per carry and pretty limited action. He's only played the last 2 weeks here in 2024, but they just sent James Conner to IR. Trey Benson is already on IR. Carter took over last week when Conner came out of the game, and he led the team in carries. They just signed him today to the active roster. Their alternative is DJ Dallas. At least Michael Carter does have a career 100-yard game to his name. He has a career 2 touchdown game under his belt. DJ Dallas can't say any of those. In fact, DJ Dallas's career high in a game is 18 carries. His career high in yardage was 43, and those did not come in those same games. So I'm not sure if you want to roll with DJ Dallas in that backfield, but I will take Michael Carter in that spot start there for 4,700. The 49ers season is done. They give up the 6th most points to running backs, so I'll roll the dice with Carter. Anybody else got a suggestion there for helping fill out lineups cheap?
Yeah, I'll throw one out there. I got Marvin Mims actually at $4,600. He's been oddly involved, and this is partly, I've been a big Marvin Mims guy, so this is partly just me wanting to say, I knew he was good if you actually just give him the opportunity to play. And then we kind of let him get mixed in on the rushing game and the receiving game. And last week had 8 catches for 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know if he gets that production again, but I do know the Broncos need a win. And Kansas City's not going to be playing really anybody of note in this upcoming game. So I will take the shot there on Marvin Mims at $4,600.
Another name I'd considered throwing out there myself. Chris, Adam, either one of you guys got somebody else you want to throw in the mix here?
If you do not go Brock Bowers as your tight end option, and if you do, you could still consider him. But I think Jacoby Myers is $5,700. He's not one of those guys that off the radar, but is still playing. The Raiders are still playing for something, obviously, and they still continue to throw the ball. Jacoby Myers, one of those sneaky guys that can go out there and win a week for you. Jacoby Myers, another guy you talked about last week. I'm feeling still out there too, at a cheap price. So two guys that people have been forgetting about that have been pretty cheap coach the last couple of weeks. Why not go back to the well?
All right, Adam, you want to stump for anybody yet, or we want to move on?
I'm good to move on. Actually, I was just thinking Jacoby Myers. That's super funny. So definitely vouch for that one. But don't have another name for you.
Surprise! All right, Happy New Year and cheers, everybody.
Surprise, surprise! The Dynasty Bros on the same page. Well, guess what, guys? It's time to count your green. And we have a very special guest to help us do it, and we need to properly get him introduced. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. He's the #1 betting expert in all of sports. The one, the only, Chas Filardi.
I don't know if you guys can even hear me because I'm struggling with my audio here.
Yeah, well,
We're hearing you, Chas.
You
know what? For the last month, that thing is actually accurate. How sick is that? You can talk about yourself a lot, but yeah, it's been. Even though today I took a bad one with Oregon, but I almost feel bad for the sports book. It's been such a great since Thanksgiving, guys. It's just been phenomenal. But how do you play this week? I mean, I'm listening to you guys, and I'm thinking, you're sitting out there, right? I don't care who you are. I put on the helmet. I understand the concept. You got nothing to play for but yourself and your team. Yeah. It's hard to really have confidence, right, in the selections you make.
Well, this is one of the wild weeks, Chas, which is why we had to bring you in, because what happens is you still want to keep winning money. You're going into week 18, but you really have to pick your spots, know who's motivated, pay attention to the reports leading into the week to know exactly who's even going to be playing, who wants to play, who's going to play a full game, and make your estimations on that.
Is it? I mean, what's the biggest screw up you could do in sports betting? It's probably not check the weather, right? So right. I remember one time it was a Notre Dame game. Notre Dame and Michigan, they're dead to me. But it was a Notre Dame game, and I bet the over, and it was like a hurricane game, and it was like 6-3 or something at halftime. But with fantasy, it's like your guy doesn't even play, right? That's the worst case scenario, and that's this week.
Yeah, and that's why we tell people don't play your championships in week 18. It's not worth it because you're likely picking up some Notre Dame scrub off the waiver wire. But for those of you who know,
that's what everybody I talk to, as you know, I've done fantasy with you guys. I don't do fantasy well, and I don't do contests well, but second half Chas, figure it out, man. I'm a live action.
But what you do, Chas, is you cash tickets well. That's how we bring you on.
In the last month, I had a game where I cashed 30 tickets in one game, 28, 26, and 24. It's been great. It's so funny because I'm hanging out with my 30-year-old sons and their friends, and I'm just making them look like idiots. And part of it is they do stupid shit. They're guys, they're young guys. They do stupid shit. And I don't do stupid shit. I just don't make mistakes. And one of the things I learned is 3 out of 4 is not bad. But if you bet a 4-teamer, it is. But if you bet a round robin, it isn't, right?
Yeah.
And then there's nothing wrong with understanding that Satan is part of what the point spread is all about. And you got to get rid of Satan in your life any way you can. And money lines do that for you. And so you say, well, yeah, but money lines don't make any money. Okay, so instead of 12-1, you got 3-1. But on your 12-1, you lost. But on my 3-1, I won. Hello.
For those of you who don't know, Chas he was part of the MD's Fantasy Football Show for a really long time. And this year was a lot of changes. We made the new network. So really, really happy to be able to get him on now at this point in this.
And this is great you got me on because my attorney, who I've talked to about the age discrimination lawsuit that I'm coming up with the courts, he said that as long as you talk to him before the 15th of January, it won't count.
There you go. So we're happy to have him on. He's going to help us get through some bets. So let's dive into that, shall we? So we got the Saturday matchups. We got the Cleveland Browns, Baltimore Ravens, and Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. So right now, the Ravens, they actually do have something to play for. They don't technically have that division locked up yet. And they're playing against the Browns team who's playing DTR. So the spread is wild. It's a 17.5-point spread in favor of the Ravens. It's a 41.5 over under. Chaz, is there anything in this game standing out to you?
Well, the first thing, it's funny because you guys know how much credit I gave you in making me a better handicapper because the fantasy level drops down to players, and I never went that low. But I do data and I go to stats, and the funny part about it is the biggest thing I learned in the last 4 or 5 years is you got to just say, I want nothing to do with this game. And you got to be able to say you want nothing to do with this game. And I literally have sheets of paper. I just boom, 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 boom. So now I'm down to 7 games out of 16. So that means I looked at 16 games, but more than half of them I threw away. And there are 7 games I'm talking about. 2 of them are Saturday because how bizarre is it that this conference or this division comes down to the last week and there's 2 games between the players and they're both worth betting on.
Yeah, and from a player prop standpoint, like, look, I'm tempted by Derrick Henry and 100 yards rushing prop. It's not that he couldn't do it against Cleveland, but I also look at this situation and say, if they're up 3 scores midway through the third quarter and the Browns can't move the ball because DTR is at quarterback, how much more will Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and company actually play? So I'm actually staying away from props in that game as well. So you don't have anything in that game. Let's go to Cincinnati.
No, that's not what I said, young man. That's not what I said. What I said was this happens to be one of the 7. So here's what I've got. Quarter 1 Baltimore. Now you know that the second half Chaz Nomer is misleading. What I do is I separate data by quarter 1, first half, second half, and game. And I isolate trends, and then I look at why. Because the why, as you know, is everything. If you guys have people you talk to in fantasy, and it sounds great, and then you say why, and they say because my uncle says he's a good quarterback or something like that, and all of a sudden the credibility drops, But so here's what I got: quarter 1 Baltimore, and then Baltimore team total over, and I would do that for the first quarter, for the first half of the game, and recently I've been blessed. I won 3 games in this streak where the only way my wife, so Vicky, you've heard of Vicky. So Vicky's very knowledgeable of football to where she'll scream at a coach, how the hell do you call that play in the middle of the game? How do you not love a chick like that, right? And so we're watching this game, and she goes, so what do you think? I said, well, honey, the only way I could win is if it goes overtime. I had 3 of them. I had one today. I had the team total over for Texas, and I almost feel bad for the people that had Texas and it didn't cover. I just thought it was too many points. And the only way I could win, they had 24 points, and it goes horrible. And I had like 33.5 or something. And so that's the one thing I found, that those team total overs, I had a big one with Denver a couple weeks back. I loaded up. It jumped off the page on me, right? Team total over. They scored 21 points in the first half. Their game total was like 19.5. And as you know, I have no problem with cashing my ticket and going to watch a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense to go with Baltimore in the first quarter because that's when they're coming out the strongest to try to put that game away early. All right, so we go to the second Saturday game, which you also said you have something on when Cincinnati.
It's the same thing. But again, Cincinnati and Tampa Bay, they've been giving me a lot of money lately, as you know. Cincinnati was out of it, right? Like week 3, 4, they were out of it.
Yeah, before
they're still in it. So same thing. It's just my notes. It says Q1 Cincinnati team total over. So I'm betting these teams early because and again, you guys know it's a different way to bet that first quarter because it's like been a 6 furlong race in the horses, or maybe it's a quarter horse race. Actually, it's like a quarter horse race. It's if you first of all you bet it ahead of time. You don't know if you're going to win the toss. Then you win the toss, and they take the ball. Or they win the toss and they defer. So it really is when you bet it the quarter 1 before the game starts. There's some trippy things. But today I'm at a friend's house. They flew in ribs from Kansas City. for New Year's Day.
Nice.
Right, so I'm good with that. And he says to me, I guess you're going to lose. I said, well, the only way I'm going to win is 4 things have to happen. And boom, 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 boom. All 4 of them happened. And he goes, you need to wipe your mouth. I was eating ribs. I had Kansas City barbecue all over my face. And I wasn't about to wipe my face anytime soon.
No, I hear that's a much tighter line too in that game, expecting a much more competitive game anyway. So Cincinnati on the road favored at 1.5 points. Pittsburgh doesn't have much to play for. There's an outside chance that they could maybe take the division if the Ravens were to lose their Browns, but it's just a very unlikely scenario with a 48 over under in that game. So Chaz, like in the first quarter for that matchup, that game I do have props that I like quite a bit though. So I have Jaylen Warren here. I got a same game parlay I think you could do on Jaylen Warren. So you got 38.5 rushing yards and 21.5 receiving yards. And he's been over that the last 4 weeks in a row. Warren's been leading the backfield now. They've switched things over from Najee Harris over to Warren. He's had a 56-38 split in snaps to Harris. Now, yes, Harris has slightly out carried him a little bit, 46-38%, but Warren's reached double-digit carries the last 2 weeks in a row. So with that, Cincinnati allowing the 12th most rushing yards per play. Warren's had a 15% target share over the last 4 games. He's had 40-plus receiving yards in the last 2 weeks. And it's another game where I think they're going to utilize him. It could be a higher scoring game because Cincinnati's been putting up points and it's a weak defense. So I think you could do a single game parlay on Jaylen Warren over his rushing and his receiving prop. The other one that I have in this matchup is Jamar Chase, 93.5 receiving yards. I mean, Joe Burrow's already come out and said, we're making sure he's getting the triple crown. He's been phenomenal all season long. Pittsburgh can't cover him. The last time he played him, he went over 100 yards. So I love that. He's been over that 93.5 mark the last 4 games in a row. Without Chase Brown, it's completely dependent on Joe Burrow throwing the ball to Chase, throwing the ball to T. Higgins. So I do like this quite a bit. And the Steelers have not been great in the secondary, allowing 13th most passing yards per play in this one. So there's parlays and player props I like in that game. All right, so my first Sunday game I want to talk.
Let me ask you guys a question because I don't know your world as much as you know your world, but in this final week, things that happen early impact things that happen late. So Saturday, things happen, change what happened Sunday, and early games on Sunday change, right? So in other words, you could wake up Sunday morning as an NFL player, you got a shot for the playoffs. By the time you get to the field, you're out of it, right? How do you guys handle that with fantasy? Do you change last minute or do you stick with your guns? How does it work?
Well, look, we spend all week long rummaging through the data like you do, come out with rankings, and then we usually stick with those rankings. That's why we do rankings in the first place, to let you know who it is you value more over the other player, ultimately speaking. And in a week like this, it gets a little crazy because you kind of have to infer what you think players are going to want to do. But in a case like Jamar Chase, the Cincinnati Bengals have everything to play for. He's been phenomenal all season. He's got a contract coming up for next season. So it makes all the sense in the world to go with a player like that. Same thing with Jaylen Warren. He wants to prove that he could be the guy next year because Najee Harris could be moving on. So you got to look at some of those elements as well. But Jason or Chaz, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I gotta say the other thing, Chaz, I think to look for is like Dan talked about is just the news. You know, you see what guys are practicing. The cool thing about football is guys typically have to get reps to play. So a guy's not going to essentially wake up Sunday morning and not play. If they haven't practiced all week, if they haven't been part of the game plan, they're not going to be out there. So even guys who have nothing quote unquote to play for will still play, or vice versa, because that's how it's set up. They're not going to have you guys just roll out there and have the third string quarterback.
No, but the bottom line is if you think you got a shot when you wake up and by the time you get the kickoff, you're eliminated, it's got to impact you emotionally.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%. Chad, the other game I want to talk to you about is Carolina and Atlanta, because I got a couple props in this one, but I'm curious, is that one of the 7 games that you had?
Yeah, and I keep it simple. I wrote NOPE, N-O-P-E. I said, you know what? Would I bet my own money on this game if it wasn't my money? Well, this is actually my money, so that's a legitimate question, but nope. I don't want nothing to do with it, but talk to me.
Well, here's what I got. Look, the Falcons have, again, it's an outside shot because it's very, very slim odds that you're going to see Tampa Bay lose to the Saints. But if the Saints were to pull off a miracle, the Falcons can still get into the playoffs by winning the division, by winning this game. So they're going to go all out. So I like Michael Penix a lot. First of all, he's gone over his passing prop, and this week it's 207.5 yards the last 2 weeks in a row. The Falcons, They have the Carolina Panthers have given up the 5th most passing yards per play this upcoming week. They want to get the rookie more reps. They want to continue to be aggressive down the field. I think we'll see him be a little more efficient in this matchup than he was last week. So I do like Michael Penix over 207.5 passing yards. I also like on the flip side of that, on the Carolina side, Adam Thielen sitting at 16.5 receiving yards. I mean, he's coming off a 100-yard performance. He's back to being Bryce Young's favorite target. It's likely a negative game script again for Carolina here against Atlanta. So a lot of throws coming in the second half. And the thing I like the most about Adam Thielen is that he's projected to primarily see D. Alford on the other side for most of the games. And that is a matchup he should be able to take huge advantage of. So I like the over on Adam Thielen at 60.5 receiving yards.
That's a great point, because that's a situation where both of those games are 10 o'clock, right? So Tampa Bay wins.
West Coast people out there.
To Atlanta. But don't tell me a start in the NFL doesn't mean something to that kid from Washington. He's going to play hard. He'll play to the whistle blows. And so anything you got that has him in it, you got to feel good about.
Yeah, I like that too. Hey, how about Washington and Dallas? Because I actually don't have any props in this game, so I'm curious if you have anything in this one.
No, threw it out. I got Baltimore, right? Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Denver, Miami, Tampa Bay, and Atlanta. Those are the 7 teams. Because really, I'm not. It's my money, guys. I'm betting my money. I'm not going to bet it on two teams that are eliminated, not knowing. I have no imagine what that coaches go, right? Players go. This team may never. 60 guys played together for a year. They were brothers, right? And then 30 of them are gone the next year. So I'm sticking with teams where they have a reason to play. Because, again, I'm looking for. I'm not this week for me. It's just don't do anything stupid with my wagering. You know, if I don't bet a bowl game, it's very unusual. But I'll bet small amounts. But I'm betting it's football. I know it's going to be over soon. I actually, just as you know, we do every year our sports betting weekly AFC NFC getaway weekend. It's a betaway weekend actually, and I just booked the tickets. I got a round trip from Vegas to San Diego for $69.
Oh, sweet.
So if you are in Vegas on the weekend of the 23rd through the 27th, hit me up. We'll get together.
Yeah, I think my wife might divorce me if I'd up and leave without her. But getting back to this, though, just to run through the numbers, because I forgot. So the Falcons are 8-point favorites of the Panthers, an over-under of 48. Commanders, kind of interesting on this one, because they're 5-point favorites against Dallas. They could potentially jostle some seeding there with Green Bay, but not much to play for. I know they said they're going to play Jaden Daniels, but I'd be really curious because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, if anybody wants to chime in here, but I feel like if Jaden Daniels even looks funny, they're going to take him out of this ball game. So it's a little topsy-turvy to me. I don't know. Adam, would you take any action there on that game with that idea?
It's interesting because the matchup differential you're getting if they win, if I'm Washington, I really want to win this game because this is the difference between going into Philadelphia and playing the Rams. That's a pretty big gap. If I'm Green Bay, if I'm Washington, I want to win, very much so. So that's something I'm going to keep in mind for these games.
I like that.
That's so important. He's absolutely right. That think about that. The Rams don't scare me. The Philly, if Jalen Hurts is fine, scares me a little.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, especially if they can jostle that seeding away. It depends. I know the Packers are going to come out. We'll talk about that game actually right now, Chicago and Green Bay. I know the Packers are probably looking at the same type of deal. They should be able to take care of business Chicago, which means Commanders, even if they win, they won't be able to move up. But those games are happening at the same time. They're not going to know that. So they're going to be playing to win for that. So the Chicago-Green Bay game, I just had it here. Here we go. So we got 10-point favors for the Green Bay Packers in Green Bay and over-under of 41 because nobody believes Chicago has the ability to put up points anymore, apparently. And really, after that Seattle game, I don't know how you would. so it's hard to argue with. Chaz, you got anything in this one?
No, but I want to say in public that I feel so bad for that quarterback. I really do, because it seems like he's a really pretty good quarterback, but the Bears just aren't a very good organization right now.
No, they're not. And this is something we're going to have to table for the offseason discussion, guys, especially with Adam and Chris in the Dynasty section and everything like that. But if I hear one more person tell me that the Bears definitively made a mistake by drafting Caleb Williams over Jaden Daniels, I'm going to scream because they're not taking context into consideration. But something
I saw that guy live, okay? I saw that guy live. He's an incredible football player. They just are very, very bad at what they do, which is trying to be a football team.
Yeah, it's bad organization from top to bottom. I do have on the Bears side a player prop for this one, though. So Keenan Allen, 55.5 receiving yards over that the last two of the last 3 games. And even last week with the whole dud against Seattle, he still had 8 targets in that game. He had double-digit targets the previous 2 games before that. He's projected to get Javon Bullard, which is, I'm sure our resident Packers fan, Chase, would tell you, that's the matchup you want as a wide receiver right now. So, yeah, I'm taking Keenan Allen over 55.5 receiving yards this upcoming week. Chase, are you good? I'm getting Chaz and Chase, and it's screwing me all up. Chase, are you going to put any action on your Packers there at a 10-point favorites at home with seeding on the line?
With seeding on the line, I mean, I'm willing to take them straight up. I don't know if I'm willing to take them at a 10-point favorite or not.
Would you
that's brilliant, because that's what people say. Well, I don't know. Just bet them. Don't worry about the line. If you can't afford to throw 500 down to win 100, okay? Then you parlay them with somebody else who should not lose by 7 points. And I'm telling you that the money line stuff, you got to get over the fact that a 14 parlay plays plus 240, because plus 240 is plus 240. I don't care what you're doing. I bought Bitcoin. I got plus 240. I got, I bought IBM. I got plus 240. Plus 240 is plus 240.
Yeah, and you just throw in that parlay and away you go. That's why we love parlays so much on the show, especially when we're talking to Chaz there. So next up, I want to get into the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans game. And this one's basically a pick 'em. The Texans on the road favored by 1 point. The over-under's 38. The Texans truly have nothing to play for. They cannot go up in seeding even if they win this game. Tennessee is just playing for pride, playing, one last time to dig it at the division. And I'm going to, Chris, I want to have you help me out with this one before I kick it over to Chaz to see what he has on this game. It's very curious to me because Houston's in this diabolical situation, I think, where they could really use a week off because they've been so banged up, they haven't been able to keep their team healthy. But on the flip side, they've been playing really bad football as of late and may want to try to take the opportunity to get some momentum going into the postseason. So do you think we're going to see a full shot out of Houston? Because if we do, it's hard for me not to take them at -1 to basically win this game.
I'm not sure what you mean by a full shot, Dan. I mean, we've seen this team is basically playing backups at a lot of their key positions right now. So I don't know how deep they can go. Maybe not playing C.J. Stroud, what you're considering.
Yeah, like playing C.J. Stroud, playing Joe Mixon, playing Nico Collins. Like, are they going to play those guys, you think, the full game?
I think that they will. I mean, to your point, I think they have to kind of get these guys in a rhythm. I think my only caution why I'm not 100%, yes, they'll definitely play him is if C.J. Stroud goes out there and starts getting smacked around left and right and killed, I don't know if they're not going to pull him because, that they want to save him for the playoffs. But I think more than likely, barring that, this team's if they're going to have him start and they're going to play him and have to play to win. I see that Nico Collins is still kind of getting his legs back. They put out a poor performance last week. They needed to kind of get back on track offensively in a lot of different ways. Joe Mixon is the guy that I wouldn't feel confident necessarily because I think running back's a position that you can kind of see those guys get eased in here or there where they can easily go to Ogumaway, for example, to get back in a passing attack and kind of check the ball down to him. So Mixon is the guy I wouldn't necessarily play for fantasy-wise, but overall, for talking about the 1.5, I think Houston is the bet to take in that game.
Chaz, do you have anything in that matchup?
Yeah, one of the things when I talk to people about handicapping is don't let the math or the data mess with you. Use words. Just write words down. And early in the season, I wrote 2 words. I wrote Tennessee sucks. And so I've been betting based on those words. Do you know what their against the spread number is this year?
You tell me.
2-14. It's just fucking terrible. Can I say that on the air? I'm sorry. But I mean,
get here.
They suck in so many different ways. But here's the problem. Now it comes to, you're absolutely right. Chris mentioned great points. It's week 18. But here's the thing. If you've sucked for the entire season, I don't think anything that the other team has to do with it is going to change you from sucking. So I'm just always going to bet against Tennessee.
And to that point, Chase, Dan, there's talk about them playing both quarterbacks. I've never seen that work even in college. I think this is a thing that's going to be, blow up in their faces. So I definitely like Houston in that game.
Brian Callahan's just like, you're both going to be gone next year, so both get hurt. I don't even care.
I understand. I have a really rudimentary aspect of data science, which is I isolate data points, and then I just count how many data points. Well, it works for football, but it works for horse racing, and I'm good at both of these things. And boy, this Tennessee team, it just keep bet against it. When you get a team that you can get bet against in the first quarter, first half, second half in the game, then all of a sudden you're winning 4 times. So they play, 17 games, and you can win 90 bets in a season on one team just by betting against them, because it really isn't always betting the team you like. It's betting the team that sucks too, or betting against them.
With all that, I think I've been convinced that I'm definitely taking Houston at -1 in this matchup. I love it, guys. All right, so the next game I want to talk about, we're staying in the South. It's Jacksonville and the Colts. So for this game right now, the Colts are favored at -4.5, despite the fact we're not entirely sure which of the quarterbacks it's going to be, whether it's Anthony Richardson, who's dealing with an injury, or Joe Flacco coming in for another start. The over-under is 45. I know Chas is going to use the logic of Tennessee. I know Jacksonville sucks, but I just can't get what happened last week out of my head completely, watching the Giants put up over 40 points against that Colts team, because that was just mind-blowing. I do have a player prop, though. So I got Brian Thomas, 82.5 receiving yards. He's been over that 4 games in a row. The Colts are allowing the 3rd most yards passing per play and the 12th most yards to wide receivers, and Brian Thomas has been on a tear and really leading the way, and I think he'll put a final stamp there on his rookie year. So I do like him over the 82.5 receiving yards mark. Chaz, are you seeing anything in this game?
No, but it 84, right? That's not happening in one play. Sometimes you guys hit bets where it's 27.5, and the guy gets 30 on the first.
Some of us have to work for it, Chaz. All right, some of us have to work for it.
No, I'm just saying, but if you look at how many points they give up, it's a lot of points.
I don't know, Adam's probably wants to bet the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Colts definitely lose. That's probably what he wants to do. Please, Jaguars beat the Colts for a better draft pick. I don't know. You think they're going to cover against Jacksonville? That has always been your Achilles heel when you're good.
This is true. My one thought is, man, if for the longest time this regime has been very I mean by regime I mean the Ballard era more than the Steichen era. It's been very, when the chips are down and it's all on the line, they have faltered every single time. There's the Houston game last year, there's this past week, there's what was it, New England a couple years ago. When there's no pressure, I think that they can cover with no pressure. If they needed to win this game to make it the playoffs, had they beaten the Giants, this would be a trap game. I would have been more worried about this game in that scenario than them being out of the playoffs.
That's a Colts fan who knows. That's the Colts fan who knows.
Well, I mean, in my data, there's these very high numbers on the side of the equation where how many points have they given up, and it's a lot of numbers every single week for a lot of weeks. It's hard to win a lot. It's hard to win a lot of games in any sport if you give up a lot of runs, right?
Well, here's a game that is going to be really hard, I think, to really pin down a confident bet unless you can find a little prop somewhere. I don't have any props in this one that I felt confident about. That was the Buffalo Bills taking on the New England Patriots. The Bills are favored at 3 points. It's in New England. They're saying they're going to start with Josh Allen. I would be flabbergasted if he actually played the entire game.
He's not,
because it's
they already say he's not. He's just starting just to get the record.
Yeah. So he's not going to play the whole game. Not that it necessarily matters because the Patriots are that bad. So it's also part of this conversation. They're hoping Drake May is going to start this Sunday. It's not a given, although he was limited in practice. So that's something you'd have to watch in this one too. I will say this. If Drake May doesn't practice tomorrow, I probably go ahead and get the 3 on Buffalo while you still can, because that number will change if they find out Drake it's going to be Jacoby Brissett over Drake May. But I do wonder, Chaz, if there's anything you got on this game.
No, but Buffalo's won me so much money during this streak because, as you know, he just does stuff that just isn't physically. Him and Mahomes, right? Mahomes does it a little different than he does, but he does it the same way. How did he do that? That's not by that snow game. I mean, I'm sitting in a sushi bar, and I had 4 straight weeks where the Monday night game was the 5th or 4th game of a round robin. That means I'm hitting every 2-teamer, I'm hitting every 3-teamer, I'm hitting every 4-teamer, and I'm hitting a 5-teamer. And he throws for a touchdown pass, he runs for a touchdown pass, and he catches the touchdown pass. It's hard not to see if he's on the field. And that would be maybe a first quarter lean, but that's not on my things to do this week. I'm taking my money this week. I'm going to take it out of the market. I'm going to sit and rest a little bit, and I'm going to get aggressive because we got 3 weeks to the AFC NFC championships, and I'm going to be in Vegas for them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't blame you one bit on that one. It's just funny. Yeah, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they do it in different ways, but for fantasy owners, Josh Allen's a hell of a lot better. I'm just saying. Patrick Mahomes has been a mind-boggling dud, especially with his draft capital has been. Let's move on to the Giants and Eagles. So here's a wild one. We know the Eagles aren't playing anybody. Not even going to let Saquon Barkley go get the record, which I hope that they actually ran it by him and he signed off on it yeah, I'm okay with not getting it. We have seen Saquon earlier in the season take himself out and say I'm okay. I don't need to get any more. He did it against the Giants then, actually. So maybe he was on board with this. But I'm going to lose my freaking mind if I find out that the Eagles just sat him when the chance to go to get the record over 100 yards against the Giants.
Well, that's news to me. That's news to me because the last news I heard is they hadn't decided yet.
That came out this afternoon. So this afternoon, they came out and said Saquon is, in fact, going to rest along with Jalen Hurts, who's still technically in concussion protocol to begin with and everything else. So the lines right now on this game, and I'm jumping all over the place here. We got the Giants. So it's the Eagles are still favored, even with Kenny Pickett, who's also banged up, or Tanner McKee at quarterback and Kenneth Gainwell at -2.5 here in Philly. Anything standing out to you in a matchup like this?
No, I mean, I'm thinking he must be a really decent human being. Because if my boss let me go and I had a chance to screw with him and create a record in front of his face, I would do it every single time. I've never said I'm a proud man. I'm just who I am.
Yeah, it's absolutely mind-boggling to me. I mean, Chris, will you take that action there? Eagles -2.5 of the Giants. Do you think the Giants cover because they're not going to play anybody on the Philadelphia side?
I mean, I think they're not going to play any guy on the Philadelphia side, but that's the report coming out. The report was they did go by the players and the team and ask them specifically if they wanted to go for the record and that they were going to go by what they said. So obviously, it seems that Saquon was okay not playing. I don't think necessarily I want to touch this game. I'm going to take Chaz's advice on this game. This is a game where I think the Eagles can score points, but I don't want to touch this game. I think there's too many variables up for play, especially the Giants, where they could just screw themselves with the Giants.
Some of your friends, the buddies you bet with, and you have to say, "I bet the Giants," and you have to accept that. I'm not. There's a lot of things I'll admit to, but that's not one of them.
Well, and Chris, the point that you make about the variables in this game is why I don't have any props for you in this game. But I do have a prop in this next matchup. So we got the Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And this is another big line. The Bucs are favored at 13.5. And again, the Bucs do have something to play for. The over-under sitting at 43.5. They win the division. It's that simple, regardless of what happens in the Atlanta game. So they're going to have reason to play. And I really love the idea of Bucky Irving this week going over 85.5 rushing yards. I mean, remember, he's been over that 2 of the last 3 in particular. You're going to probably, if this plays out like it should, and I know division games can get weird sometimes, but if it plays out like it should, he should be able to run the ball out there in the second half. He's been playing double the snaps of Rachaad White as of late, too. It's not even barely a committee anymore. And the Saints, of course, are allowed the 6th most rushing yards to the running backs and the 2nd most rushing yards per play. So Bucky Irving over 85.5 rushing yards. I kind of like that in this one. Chaz, when you see a big line like this, especially when one team has something on the line, but it's a divisional opponent who has a chance to play spoiler, is there anything sticking out to you in that?
I'm treating the same as I am the Ravens and the Bengals game, which is bet team quarter one, and then bet their team totals. Don't worry about who wins. Just worry about if they get their touchdowns. I think they're going to score. I'm a big Baker Mayfield fan. I've got a buddy that knows a guy that was on. So my son's friend was the quarterback at Stanford. He played with Hooper, and Hooper was with Cleveland when he was with Cleveland. And they sent me a video from these guys playing bear pong in the backyard of Hooper's house, I think it was. And it was like, these are just kids. These are just kids, you know. He's matured so much as a football player. Remember, he was pretty special in college. He wasn't just good. He was special. I mean, he won games that people shouldn't have won in college. But I'm a big fan. I don't know how far they're going to go in the end. I don't think I'm going to be betting. I don't think they're going to be in the game on the 26th in January when I'm in Vegas. I don't think they're going to be there, but I like them this week.
Yeah, I mean, Chase, you're a big Baker Mayfield fan too. You going to take the Bucs there at 13.5?
13.5. Honestly, I might be persuaded to sprinkle a little on that just because New Orleans has been so terrible lately. And like I said, I think Baker's going to be flinging that ball all over the field. I think they're going to pull out all the stops. I think they want to leave no doubt that they belong in the playoffs and take that division. Yeah, I mean, I could see myself putting something on them even at 13.5. That's a little bigger spread than I normally would, feel comfortable.
But really, you made a good point. How many points could the Saints score? Really, honestly.
Well, here's what I'll throw out here, because the Saints earlier were trying to make it seem like that maybe they could have Derek Carr and Chris Olave and have them play in this week's game. Now, having said that, Derek Carr did not practice today. I don't know why he would bother. Chris Olave is another one. I don't know why he would bother, but he did practice in full, although he's been practicing in full the last couple of weeks. So again, situations where I don't know why they would bother to actually play these players. I don't think these players should actually want to play in these games with their injuries, especially Chris Olave with the concussion issues that he has. But if it is Spencer Rattler, then yeah, I don't know if they can score more than 10 points right now against Tampa Bay, quite frankly. And they have Kendrick Miller who's going to be out. They're down to nothing. They're down to dust. So this is actually one of those times, Chase, I'm with you. I don't usually like to bet these big lines, especially in divisional games in the NFL, but I feel pretty good about this one being wrapped up a 34-10 type of ball game for the Buccaneers against the Saints in this one. So we got the 4 o'clock hour finally. So we got Kansas City and Denver, and another situation where Kansas City's got nothing to play for. Denver has everything to play for. And this line reflects that dramatically, because Denver is a 10.5 point favorite in Denver with a 39.5 over under. And Chaz, before I get to you, I just want to say I'm taking Kansas City. Carson Wentz is not a bum. I don't think the Chiefs, even if they don't play, a lot of their key guys are just going to roll over. And some of their key guys are backed up by veterans who can play a little bit. Like I think DeAndre Hopkins will play a little bit in this game. I think they still want to play Hollywood Brown and get him some reps in this game. Yes, you won't see Chris Jones. You won't see Travis Kelce. You won't see Patrick Mahomes. You probably won't see Isaiah Pacheco. But I don't think Denver's good enough to beat Kansas City, even with their backups, by 10.5 points. I don't. So I actually like Kansas City here as a little underdog special there for you. I don't know, Chaz, what do you think?
Well, I don't even touch the line of a Chiefs game until I know what Taylor Swift is doing. If she's going to be there, she's traveling. She just came off that world tour. She doesn't travel much. But this is one of my plays. I do have Denver's team total over. Here's what I think. I think I've watched a lot of football this year, and I think he's a very good quarterback. And I think that this coach, I'm not a big fan, but he's had some success. But this kid is just a good quarterback. And so I think I'm going to get my points. And I think that they'll play to the end. Remember, what good is having any over if the team in the second half just shuts it down? I don't see this happening with this game.
Denver's over a team total, by the way, 25.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook, in case you were wondering. Okay, so the Chargers and the Raiders in their divisional game. This is another one. So this I'm pulling back from my 49er roots. Okay. because the Chargers don't really technically have anything to play for. I mean, maybe seeding a little bit, jostling up in the air, but they're in the playoffs, and you're playing against the Raiders who are terrible. And this is a team in the Chargers that they've been a little bit banged up. But I know Jim Harbaugh. I know his mindset, and his mindset is we're going in. It's very similar to Dan Campbell. We're going in full tilt to win this game because I want everybody on their A game heading into the postseason. So I think you're going to see all these Chargers play. Now, do they play the whole game? That's going to depend on how the game goes to start the week. But I do think here we got I had just had it. So the line here was going to be a little bit tighter than you would typically expect because of the expectation that the Chargers don't have to do much. So they're only favored by 5 points in this game. I like that bet because I do, like I said, going back to my 49er roots, I know what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. They're not going to look at this as like a get everybody healthy type of game. They're going to go get it. So I do like the Chargers covering 5 points here. I don't know if anything stuck out to you in this matchup, Chaz.
Yeah, the fact that the Chargers are really good on the defensive side of the ball, and the Raiders suck. So I would go with the team total under for the Raiders here.
I mean, does that track with you there down there, Chase? Like you think that's a possibility? You think I'm off there on Jim Harbaugh?
No, I mean he's not Dan Campbell nuts in terms of how aggressive he wants to be or how true to the game he wants to be. But who the hell is, right? But no, he's going to play his guys. He's going to go for it. They're going to try to win this game, period. And I mean, yeah, they need to keep the ship rolling. They need to keep things going. And I can see that. Yeah. And like Chaz says, Los Angeles is just, they're damn good on the defensive side of the football. I know that Aiden O'Connell, hey, they're going to try and give him a look. They might try and loosen some things up, see what they have in him, maybe make a final decision on him for next year. But I like the Chargers to be able to shut the Raiders down and win this game, regardless of how much their starters truly play.
Yeah, I hear you. We got Seattle and the Rams. Seattle's favored here by 6.5 points, and over/under set at 38.5. And just while we were on the show, the announcement officially came in that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be starting for the Rams this upcoming week. Again, that's a team also trying to take advantage of the fact that they can't really move anywhere, so they're going to try to get healthy this week. I do like Seattle at that line then at 6.5. Seattle has to get things right for next year. And I have a good player prop, I think, for you at JSN going over 73.5 receiving yards. He's been over that 7 of the last 8. I mean, he was super consistent since that week 10 bye. He's been the top target of the team since the week 10 bye. And the Rams have been bad even with their starters on, allowing the 10th most passing yards per play this season. So I do think JSN, one of my lock 'em in player props of the week there, over at 73.5 receiving yards. Chaz, anything in this game you got going on?
Yeah, you know what? It's not one of my key plays, but when I looked at the data, all I saw was like single digits. So you got columns, right? You got a column for the first quarter, you got a column for this first half, you got a column for, and it's just single digits, all single digits for both teams. So I'm going with the under.
Chris, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, this is not a game I'm all that excited about, Dan. I go with Chad with the under. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game overall. This is a game that I'm not just like super excited for, just to bet on either way.
No, this is the kind of game. If it's the only game that was on TV at Spectrum, I would go down and blow up the Spectrum place. I would piss me off. Of course, I don't have that because I've got the box that gets me all the games. But it really is. And that's a problem. Every week you get ugly games, but when you have games where there's teams that it's the end of the season, it's like, you don't wonder they should. In the spring football, they got that challenge where you could challenge anything, which is the greatest challenge in the history of challenges. You can challenge anything. You can challenge anything. You just throw the flag out. You get one of them a game. Why every other sport doesn't have it, I don't understand. But even this game, some of these games shouldn't be played. They should just say, hey, you know what? We're going to postpone this game.
Throw the challenge before the first play and just
No, it doesn't impact your money. You get paid. But you know what? We'll give the fans back their money. Everybody wins because there's going to be like half of these games this weekend are going to be ugly.
Well, yeah, and another one too is the Dolphins and the Jets. And I know there's this ridiculous outside shot that the Dolphins could somehow get in if, this, that, and the third all happens and goes their way, which isn't going to happen. But again, we kind of talked about it earlier, guys. Like Tyler Huntley is going to be probably at least the starting quarterback for this upcoming week. I mean, maybe if Tua can pull through, but that doesn't seem to be likely at this station. The Dolphins are favored at -1. It's basically a pick 'em here. It's in New York, and it's a 39 over under. It's going to be cold on Sunday. Now, I know Tua is not playing, but the Dolphins in general don't like the cold. It's not just a Tua thing. It's a whole organizational thing. The only prop I have in this game, though, is that Aaron Rodgers does get his 500th to Devontae Adams. I do have Devontae Adams on an anytime touchdown. That's a narrative I do buy. They have that opportunity that they're going to make that happen. So just a kind of a narrative player prop, not something I typically do, but in this situation, I do kind of buy it. Chaz, anything sticking out to you in this game? Probably not, because both these teams have been bad.
Well, do remember, I grew up in New Haven, so the Jets, the Giants, the Patriots, those worlds were the worlds I was in. And the one thing that you notice is the difference between the Jets in Miami and the Jets when they played in New Jersey. I mean, it was a big difference. But in this game, I actually do have a play, and it's on the second half. It's with Miami, mostly because they just don't give up any points in the second half. And by the second half, the Jets are they're cleaning out their lockers and stuff. So
they're cleaning out their lockers before the game even starts.
Technically, I don't think you can, because you've got your cup on. You got to take your cup off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not a game I really love either way on the action. And then we got the 49ers Cardinals game, another game.
I will interject that, yes, many times Vicky has said to me, so you're betting the second half of a Week 18 game and you don't think you need help?
Dan, can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
Just before we move on from the awesome Aaron Rodgers and Jets experience, I just wanted to point out that Drew locked up with the Giants and the Jets. Drew Lock has thrown 4 touchdown passes twice since the last time that Aaron Rodgers has in the game. Twice. It's been 4 years.
About that. That's so sick.
You can thank the Colts for that one. Sorry, Adam. Yeah, it's been a bad downfall. And the fact that there are people who are still talking about whether or not Aaron Rodgers will be back next year just makes the whole thing a joke to me. But anyway, so we go on to San Francisco and the Cardinals, 2 teams. Again, both teams are out of the playoffs. In fact, if the teams were smart, they're not going to do this, but the teams are smart. They'd be playing to lose to try to just get better draft capital in this one. Cardinals are favored at -4. The over-under is at 42.5. The official announcement has come down. It will be Josh Dobbs starting at quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers this week. It will not be Brock Purdy, who hurt his elbow in the Monday night game. So you're down to Josh Dobbs. You do still have Debo and Juwan and George Kittle and Isaac Guerendo's out there. It still remains to be seen. I'm going to assume here, from what I understand, I don't know if there's a contract incentive or what. It does sound like Nick Bosa, some of the other defensive starters are going to play, although I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest with you, especially with their injury risk has been this season. But anyway, I digress. So, Chaz, when you're looking at a game like this, the starting quarterback's out. We know he's out for sure. And it's a team that's been reeling losses over the past month. Cardinals, technically speaking, are going to be playing all of their starters and actually are more healthy in this game. So at that -4 or whatever you got in this game, does anything there kind of tilt when you're dealing with that quarterback situation?
Well, let me ask you a question. As a fan of a team that has been in the NFC Championship game for 4 straight years and now is not in the playoffs, are you okay? Is everything okay with you? Or?
No, everything is not okay. It's been a very, very, very steep climb.
And I'm a big believer that our country's focus on mental health is not efficient. So if you need anything, you give me a call. But otherwise, here's what I'm going to say to you. I'm going to say that you guys do this fantasy where it's year round, right? They showed me today. The Arizona State kid, Scubido or whatever his name is, he's got that cute name. Who's the Arizona State kid?
Scatabo?
The great running back.
Scatabo.
Yeah.
What's his name?
The running back, Scatabo.
Scatabo. Think about it, right? That sounds like a New Orleans hit. Scatabo. You got to get him on your team. As soon as you can draft this kid, draft him. Because he's just an amazing.
The problem, Chad, he's gonna go too high. The 49ers only take running backs in like the 4th round.
No. The reason I'm transitioning into this is because the only guy that did ever what he did was McCaffrey.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
the only kid that ever did what you did is McCaffrey, you're pretty damn good. And I mean, look at Bowers. What Bowers did, right, was amazing. And he's doing it now in the NFL, but he's still with the Raiders. If you could do anything with the Raiders, what could you do with somebody that's good? This kid is going to be a good NFL player. And the reason I brought it up is because you mentioned the 49ers, and of course McCaffrey is, he's an incredible football player. But this kid did what he did. Now, McCaffrey did a little bit more, and it was like, so many thousand yards and so many 100 yards and receptions for a running back. But the only other name on the list was Christian McCaffrey. And I don't care what the list is, right? Best draft, fastest, best looking. I don't care what the list is. If you're on a list with Christian McCaffrey, you're okay as a football player.
Dan, you're winning this game, right?
He was amazing today. He was that Scatteroo. He was amazing. He threw the
I'm at my buddy's house. The guy with the ribs. Did I mention the ribs? They were so good. Oh my God. They were flowing in from Kansas City. They were incredible. He threw a touchdown pass for 42 yards. He had 100 yards rushing. No, he had 100 yards receiving. He had like 150 yards. They lost the game. It was heartbreaking.
At one point, he had more yards than Texas did as a team.
Yeah. And he had one play where the guy that hit him had to be a rib eater. He had to be a rib eater. This guy was 300 pounds. And this guy turned around and he went backwards and he started doing the when you push the sled in summer, all summer as a football player, you push the sled, and he pushed the sled and he went through this guy that had to be 300 pounds for a first down. And I fell in love with this guy.
Look at that. Chaz giving us a little dynasty preview. What were you going to say, Chris?
I said, you realize the 49ers are going to win this game, right, Dan?
Don't even put that in the universe. No, we need a top 10 pick. You shut your mouth. We're losing this game against the Arizona Cardinals, okay?
We know Shanahan's going to coach his ass off like he did last week. It's a given.
It's not all the stops. It's a must-have.
Thankfully, we've found the antithesis of Shanahan, and that is Nick Sorensen, who can't come up and call a defense to save his life. So hopefully they'll manage itself out a little bit. All right, so speaking of the Detroit, and this is the only game, I shouldn't say the only game, but this is the biggest game of the week. This is the one game we look at and say we should have an actual good NFL game. It's on Sunday night. You got the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Detroit Lions. I actually have 3 player props in this game. The Lions are favored at -2.5. And the over-under is at 56.5. And I got another underdog special for you. I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to win this game just because I think Detroit's defense is too awful to actually pull this one off. I'll get to Chaz about the game a little bit, but let me get to the player props. So I got Sam Darnold going over 280.5 passing yards. He was throwing the ball 35 plus times. It's a big boost in what we've seen in his average throughout the regular season. The last 3 weeks in a row, had 377 yards last week. Detroit, 323, 363, 400 passing yards. The last 3 weeks in a row, they got a practice squad secondary out there. It's almost as bad as the Colts. So I'm taking Sam Darnold to go over 280.5 passing yards. And if you're going to do that, you might as well parlay it up with Justin Jefferson going over his receiving yards prop at 86.5, which is a little bit low. I was a little bit surprised by this. He's been over that 5 of the last 6. Detroit, again, I can go into the whole thing, just letting receivers run wild on them this upcoming week. And we do expect this to be a high-scoring game. I don't think the line's wrong when it says 56.5 over under. I think points are going to be had. So I want to flip to the other side and go Amon-Ra St. Brown. 68.5 receiving yards over that 2 of the last 3. He's had a 27% target share, went for 112 yards the last time he played Minnesota. And they've allowed the second most receiving yards to the wide receivers, second to only Detroit. So the wide receivers should have a good game in this one. And I got player props all across the board. Chaz, this has got to be one of the games you got something on.
It's the only game that I highlighted and I wrote OMG. And I did this one other time. It was the Buffalo game. Remember, it was 40. Buffalo lost by 2 or won by 2.
Buffalo Rams game?
Yeah. When you look at the data for this game, you say, how did they not score 100 points in this game?
Yeah. No, 100%.
So any prop that you got that has the words over in it, I'm on your side, man. Here's what I'm thinking. The second half, Detroit at home is is really good. So I'm looking over for the first half. I'm probably over for the quarter too, over for the game, and then in the second half, I'm hopping on the Lions no matter what the score is.
All right. Yeah. They have been a second half team. That's come to play, especially offensively. I don't know. What do you guys think?
And then one more thing I got to throw out, because they were the 5th team of a 5-team round robin the other night. And as you know, if you watch the game, and I'm assuming that of anybody in the world, you guys watched the game, right? Right? You thought it was a loser. And then all of a sudden, they okay, now we got a shot. And then it ended up, they kick another field goal that we're given 4.5 and winning by 6. And then they scored a touchdown, and I just sat there. And it didn't matter. They brought in the second-string quarterback after he got hurt, and it didn't matter. It was one of the best victories of my life, because 5-team round robins with 4s, 3s, and 2s pays a lot of money.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. Yeah. What do you guys think? I mean, the number 1 seeds on the line, the division's on the line. Matchup against Minnesota, Detroit, part 2. The first one was really good. Detroit, of course, winning that one. I don't know, Adam. What do you think? What do you think? Who wins this game here?
I really like to think that this is going to be a nice hurrah for Detroit. Everyone, it feels like they're getting doubted again. Everyone feels like, the Vikings are, almost the better team. And definitely it feels like the energy is on Philadelphia being the best in the conference. It feels like, I think if you're Detroit, if you're Dan Campbell and you're trying to build like the underdog thing, you finally actually can do that again after being like the front runner for 2.5 months, so to speak. So I think Detroit is kind of where they want to be and can, get a big win going into the playoffs and hopefully get a bye.
So Adam likes the Dan Campbell moxie. I want to get everyone's opinion on this one. So Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a tough one, Dan. I think either way, but I'm going to go with the Vikings on this one. I'm going to go with the team that has a better defense, a more healthy defense. I think one of the things they can do is if you can take away some Jared Goff's easy completions, especially his first easy reads, you can make him stand in the pocket a little bit more. The Detroit offensive line, while it's good, hasn't pass protected all that well this entire season. I think the Vikings can steal this game because I think they have the better matchups defensively. And offensively, I think they can attack through the air. We know that Detroit's secondary is banged up. They have a little pass rush, but Aaron Jones is going to be a problem for them too, because they have problems with speedy running backs out of the backfield as well.
What do you think? What do you think down there, Chase?
Yeah, I think the Lions are a lot better than the Packers are. I think the Packers keep finding ways to fall way behind the Vikings and then come back and almost beat them. And I don't think that the Lions are going to fall into that same trap. I think that the Lions are actually going to come out, play a full game, start to finish, and not have to play the crazy catch up that Green Bay has played against the Vikings in 2 games. I still like the Lions. I know they're beat up as all hell, but the Lions are one of the few teams in the league that I think, even if their defense can't play for the entire game, they can still score enough points to win a shootout with literally any team in the league right now. So I still like the Lions at home against the Vikings, with Dan Campbell egging them on and willing them to victory, even if he makes a couple of stupid 4th down calls, on his own 6-yard line with 13 minutes left in the first quarter or whatever. I still like the Lions at home against the Vikings to bring this one home and actually set themselves up for a run, get themselves a little bit healthy, and make a run here in the playoffs.
I have to interject, because what he said was right on. But if you look at this team that had nothing to play for, and they gave me a 5-team round robin with 4s, 3s, 2s. I mean, they had nothing to play for, right? And they went in there, and I just don't see them losing this game. But I don't think Minnesota's not going to.
I will say, Chase, either the 49ers have anything to play for either, but I digress.
but yeah, I mean, yeah, really, I'm not kidding. How did they not score 100 points in this game?
Well, to Chris's point, the 49ers had literally practice squatters on the offensive line. No Christian McCaffrey, no Brandon Ayuk, Debo, who's a bum, and put up 34 points. And with Brock Purdy getting hurt at the very end. I think that's my point here, is that, yes, they won that game because they got 2 turnovers and their offense could not be stopped. Minnesota has a legitimate defense. And I know you've been able to throw on them this year, and Detroit's going to move the ball, and I think there's going to be points scored in this game. I'm not saying that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, their offense, the Vikings offense, has been just as good as Detroit's, and you have an actual legitimate NFL defense there on the field. That's going to matter, and it's hard to beat a divisional opponent twice, especially one that's that good. Detroit took the first one. I think Minnesota takes the second one. That's going to do it for the show, though. So, Chas, I want to give you a big shout out. Your debut on the show for the start of 2025. I'm so happy to have you on, and I'm glad that we're going to have you on for the wild card, the divisional round. Hopefully, we'll be able to get you for that championship while you're away at Vegas. We can work that out. We have in the past. And then
because I don't leave till Thursday.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, if you want to have a good time, show up in Vegas on Saturday. Don't wait for the two NFC games on Sunday. Saturday is the day we have a good time.
But I want to thank you. We're going to have him on. We're going to be on 9:30 on Wednesday throughout the playoffs doing DFS and Dynasty check-ins and all this betting stuff that we kind of did today. Chas, what do you got going on right now, man? Where can everybody check you out? What content you want people to check out?
No, right now, there's still, remember they had that horrible thing in New Orleans. So Notre Dame and Georgia are still live, right? And then we have Texas, we have Ohio State, and who's the other team that's made? Penn State. And I've already sold all of their football. So I have a database for all of these teams. All 5 of the teams that are left, I have a database. I'm just floating right now. Championshipfootballs.com.
There you go. As for those who don't know, that's where you get all the championship footballs from all of the years. Chas really has a great thing going there when he has them in.
Well, I mean, I get to talk to people that won. Everybody that calls me, their team won because I only sell championship footballs. It's
right.
So cool talking to these. I'm talking to Michigan guys that were playing when the Michigan won one of their, how many they won? 8, 12, 14 championships, whatever they won. And they guys were playing with leather helmets. And I remember I was sitting in the gas station, pumping gas, talking to this guy because it rolled over to my cell. And he was telling me his story. He played with a leather helmet. And he was on one of those national championship teams. And I get to sell the football. It made me pretty proud.
That's awesome.
Going way back in the day. All right, so we'll be back again 9:30 next week here on the Fantasy Football Network channel. I'm going to get to you. Hold on, Chase. I'm going to cut it to you. Make sure you're downloading us on Operation Domination Football Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. That's not going to go away. All right. I just want to give people the schedule in the offseason. We are going to have a little bit of a hiatus between the Super Bowl and free agency. That's the only hiatus we're going to be taking this year. Other than that, we'll be good to go and on this network channel. Make sure you're signing up for our membership here on Fantasy Sports Advice because we got a ton of stuff coming up that's not just football related, not just this show, but on the Fantasy Football Advice or Fantasy Sports, Advice Network with the app coming up. So make sure you're signing up for that and getting a membership in there. And I know we have those jersey leagues, and Chase, I know you want to give a shout out.
That's right. All right. So I got to pop one here for the guy that won my Jersey League, the Jersey League that I commissioned, the Christian Watson Jersey League there on Sleeper for Fantasy Football Advice Network, Diamond Dogs and GB Chris 21. Dude had a 9-5 regular season. He was our second highest scoring team. Then he went on and knocked my ass out of the playoffs, even after I put up my highest score of the season in round 1. He then took out Fantasy Football Advice Network's own Captain FFAN in the semis to reach the finals. And when he got there, he left no doubt. He was 0.05 points away from the highest score in the entire league, the entire season. He took that thing by over 70.5 points. Attaboy, GB Chris 21. Good work. You're taking home an autographed Christian Watson jersey. And if anybody else wants to get on that kind of action next year, sign up for a premium membership over at Fantasy Football Advice Network, and you too can get in on a signed jersey league. We've got all different kinds of leagues. There's IDP leagues, there's kicker premium leagues, there's wide receiver premium leagues like mine was this year. Anything you want to get in on, you can, and you got a shot to not only play against yours truly and other pros, but to take home an autographed jersey and hang it on your wall. So good work again. Cheers. Slanja, GB Chris 21.
We'll see you guys next week. Hey there. I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.
Woo!